Hi, everyone. My name is Marcus Wilkins, Communications Manager for Undergraduate Studies at the University of Missouri. Today, we are getting to know Katherine Pill, Curator of Contemporary Art at the Museum of Fine Arts, St. Petersburg, Florida, and one of three guest jurors for the MU Visual Art and Design Showcase, which is entirely online in 2021. Thanks for joining us today, Katherine.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, I've been enjoying the series. I've watched the other two jurors as well. It's nice to get to know them virtually.
Thank you. Well, we're glad to have you and add you to our collection here. So start by telling us about yourself, your upbringing, your family, and how you became aware of your passion for art.
I was born in Toronto. I'm a Canadian citizen. I've been living in the States since, I guess, 2008 when I came down for grad school. My dad is an engineer. My mom was in social work. And I don't know, for as long as I can remember, they instilled an appreciation of the arts across the board. We were a pretty musical family. My sister's now an actress. My dad has always played music. He has an alter ego, Smokey Witt. He'll be playing later this month. And I guess it was in high school, I came across the writing of Bertolt Brecht, the playwright, and he spoke about art, in this case, theater, as a means to really jolt people out of their everyday lives and thinking. And he really applied a political bent to art. And I had never thought about the theory of art before. And I think that just has always really stuck with me. And so in undergrad, I was thinking I might be a music critic, but I took some art history courses and something clicked and I realized curator might just be, my dream job. And I've worked towards it ever since.
Very cool. Well, so tell us about that dream job at the Museum of Fine Arts in St. Petersburg, and maybe outline for us your duties there. What does a day in the life of Katherine Pill look like?
Well, it's a grab bag. And the Museum of Fine Arts was founded in 1965 in downtown St. Pete, which is kind of miraculous. It was a pretty sleepy town then. It's grown over the years, and I would say it's grown exponentially in the past 5 years. But the fact that this is a small city with an encyclopedic museum, founded by Margaret Atchison Stewart in 1965 is pretty amazing. And so my job is, putting on exhibitions drawn from the permanent collection as well as incoming exhibitions, working with artists directly, researching our collection, working with donors, maintaining correspondence. This afternoon, I'll be working on a digital layout of an upcoming show. I'll be brainstorming some programming that relates to the Spiral Group. And it certainly varies. A lot of it does happen at my desk. I guess I could mention since COVID, we closed the museum, for a few months during the summer. But during that time, we worked on a collection handbook and did some major renovations. So we have a totally different new collection wing at the museum, which has been exciting to be able to reopen with that. And then, since COVID, I'm working from home quite often, but I still go in occasionally. Working with the collection and being in the galleries is still an important part of the job.
Great. So what do you enjoy most about the job?
There's a lot, right? I mean, my favorite part of my job is probably the installation process. There's a lot of creative problem solving that needs to happen. And there's nothing quite like seeing that exhibition come to fruition. So that really hands-on aspect is something I really do appreciate. I wouldn't have become a curator of contemporary art if I didn't want to work with living artists. So that's obviously a big highlight for me, is working directly with artists on presenting the work. And, working at a museum, and an encyclopedic museum that spans all cultures and eras from 2500 BCE to the present, there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that. And I think museums are really working to make sure that we're telling stories of underrepresented artists and expanding that, so-called art historical narrative. And so that's a responsibility that I'm, humbled by and I'm really working towards. One other thing that's one of my favorite things about working at our particular museum is every sixth grader in the Pinellas County school system comes through the museum as part of their world civilizations class. So they get to see, objects firsthand, and it's an entrance to the museum that, some kids just aren't interested or aren't encouraged to go to the museum. And so that's something that I think it's really fun to see those classes in the collection galleries. Obviously, that's on hold due to COVID, but there's some really great virtual programming that's happening with the school system.
That takes me to a question that I've been meaning to ask. So our event is entirely virtual this year. How do people get the most out of a virtual experience if they're used to, obviously the best way to experience art is to see it in person, but if you can't, how do you get the best out of that?
Well, that's a very good question.
Yeah.
Of course, I've reviewed artwork online before, and for me, it's always important to read the statement, see how it aligns with the work that I'm viewing, and just when possible, you want to give a sort of in the round feel. So just multiple viewpoints of the artwork that one is trying to look at can be immensely helpful. But of course, it's also just good to hear directly from the artists. And I know that's not going to change with this online format. So I'm looking forward to that.
Excellent answer. Thank you for that. Are you an artist, or do you at least dabble?
No and no. I think it's great when there's an interlapping of artist and curator. I personally I work in the service of artists and the audience. I really, really am not an artist myself.
Okay. So when you confront or engage with art, do you have an intellectual process? And you kind of mentioned this in your previous answer, or is it more of an emotional or a spiritual thing, or both?
I've had experiences where I have a visceral reaction to an artwork, and there's nothing more exciting, really. Sort of stomach tightening and something in your throat. It's thrilling.
Mm-hmm.
But I also just want to learn about artist's intent, and maybe I go in a little analytically, but nothing beats that sort of visceral gut punch. But certainly I'm going in with curiosity first and foremost, and I just want to learn about it.
Fantastic. So what are your criteria for what constitutes good art? Or alternatively, what are the elements of different types of art that move or inspire you?
Again, I go in with curiosity, not necessarily any type of value judgment. And my job as a curator is to understand an artist's intent and sort of relay that to an audience. So that to me is sort of paramount in terms of looking at art. Of course, one of the joys of looking at art is bringing your own subjectivities and feelings and thoughts towards it. But I temper that by saying that, as a curator, I just want to know what's behind that artist's intent. But if you want to know, things that I'm drawn to in terms of contemporary art, I can lay that out. I like research-based processes, especially when they sort of center around events or people that have been underrepresented, and it's an opportunity to really shed light on something that people need to know about. Any artwork that makes me think differently about something that I see every day really gets me excited. And that might explain why Felix Gonzalez Torres is one of my favorite artists, that minimalist aesthetic that really embodies so much in terms of political activism and pure emotion. So I guess I'm just laying bare some personal biases, but I have to say that I work in an encyclopedic institution. I think of myself as a generalist, and first and foremost, I'm about curiosity. I want to learn about all sorts of artworks.
That's right. And we all have tastes. We can't get around that, right? Okay. What advice do you have for young artists or art critics?
I guess I worked for my school papers from high school through grad school, and that allowed me to just practice writing and criticism. I'll also say that in pretty much every city I've lived in, there's been discussions about a lack of art criticism. And so I would suggest, just doing it, pitching stories to, there's all sorts of national platforms that want to hear more regional stories. If there's a way that, you can create an online platform or work with others to really start some type of publication, sure there's grants out there that could help with that, because it's so important to create that dialogue around contemporary practices, and that's how artists grow and sort of communities form. It's really important. And for artists, look, I went to grad school in Chicago, and there's a huge apartment gallery scene. So artists are putting art shows in their living rooms, right? And there's a whole infrastructure that builds around this. And showing artwork is just so important, but also thinking about how it's displayed, where it's displayed, what it's in context with. That's sort of invaluable learning experiences. So I had an apartment gallery, which was one of the most exciting times of my life, really. There's no rules, but you have to do, you're the preparator, you transport the artwork, you do the paperwork, you're the gallery sitter. It's a lot of work, but for a short period of time, you can learn a lot with a lot of freedom. That's just one thing to think about. It's not easy, and there are time concerns as well as financial ones, but just this idea of doing it yourself can be really powerful.
Mm-hmm. What are the important things for artists to consider for the business side of art, something that you've been on the inside of? In other words, from your perspective, what are your tips for making a career out of art?
I think a lot of art schools now in our departments include a professional practices class, which I think is so important. There are books on the subject that can be helpful. There's that publication just called Art/Work that I know is used in a lot of curriculums. But you can't learn all this just in a book, right? So it just takes so much self-discipline to be an artist. And, a lot of organization and interpersonal skills. A lot of artists want to work with galleries, but you need to know what roster you'd fit in. So there's just a lot of research that can go into the more business and practical side, as well as networking and presenting your work, being able to speak about it concisely, as well as powerfully, and really conveying the intent.
Sounds a little like salesmanship, like selling yourself in a way and selling your work.
Maybe. I mean, it doesn't hurt to have an elevator speech prepared, I would think. Because sometimes you don't get that much time, to sort of present, a lifetime's worth of artwork. So I guess those are a couple of things I might suggest, but I just have so much respect for the discipline it takes and the passion to be an artist.
Fantastic. Well, Katherine, thanks so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And we're looking forward to having you join us for the 2021 Visual Art and Design Showcase. So thanks again.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.